Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Today we have a very good problem for you guys called minimum recolors to get k consecutive black blocks, right? It's a very good problem, so make sure to pay close attention to the problem statement, right? So it says you're given a zero index string blocks of length n, right? Where blocks of I is either a W or a B, right? Representing the color of the that particular index, right? So the characters W and B denotes the white and black respectively, right? So this is what they're doing, okay? So we're given an integer k, right, which is the desired number of consecutive black blocks, right? So okay, so which is the desired number of consecutive black blocks. Okay, interesting. So in one operation, we can recolor a white block so that it becomes a black block, right? Okay, so our job is to return the minimum number of operations needed such that there's at least one occurrence of k consecutive black blocks, right? And string, okay? So pretty concise, pretty simple prompts there, right? So we're given this particular string, right? Which is an array of characters. And our job, right, is to essentially, make sure that there's at least one occurrence, right? So return the minimum number of operations, right? Such that at least one occurrence of k consecutive blacks, right? So we need to find at least, we need to form k consecutive black blocks, right? And we need to return the minimum number of operations we would need, right? Okay, so let's go through a couple examples to do that, right? So you can see for this one, right, there's three, right? Which is, so we need to change the first one because we need to find seven, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So this is, let me zoom in real quick so you guys can see everything. This is 7, right? So in this particular substring of 7, now length 7, right, we need to switch the first one, which is W, right? We switch that to a B, right? Now we have 3. We need to switch this one as well, the third one and the fourth one, right? So we would get 7 blacks in a row, right? So it's kind of the main point here, okay? So we have, so we need 3 different operations as the minimum one, right? Because that's the string that yields the lowest amount of changes that needs to be taken, right? So each flip counts as one operation. So that's kind of what this is, guys, right? And this one's a little bit different. No changes to be made since though we do have a 2 here, right? Which is the minimum number of operations that are needed, right? So this is as simple as it gets here. Yeah. So how do we go ahead and solve this, guys, right? For you guys, we're able to understand what this is, right? So we normally like to take a straightforward route, right? So the straightforward route that I can think of, right, is to just, generate every possible substring of length 7 and go ahead and, right, calculate, right, how many, right, white blocks do I have in that substring, right? If I have this amount of white blocks in this substring of length 7, right, is the number of operations I need to make sure that all the blocks in that substring, right, is of is k in a row, right? K consecutive black blocks, right? So that's kind of what they're saying, right? So the example is to 7, right? And we need to have 7. So we saw there were 3 web blocks in that string, right? And that's why we needed 3 operations, right? So let's say, this one, after we do this one, right, we count this one, right? We go ahead and move to the next one, right? To the next set of blocks. So this is a list 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is 7, right? So we have 3 again, right? And we check the 3 operations. We try and get the minimum one, right? And that's another one, and there's still 3, right? There's one right there, and it's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? There's still 3 W's in there, right? So we still need to do the 3 operation, right? That's the minimum one, right? So you see how this is how we would do it, right? Trying to generate every possible, right? So as we're generating, right, the straightforward way would just be to have a double for loop, right? So for this one, we count, right, how many white blocks are in there, right? Boom, 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 3. We go ahead and see our 3 operations, right? Then we go ahead and we'll restart our loop again, right? we loop again, right? As you can see, right, this is not very efficient, right? We're doing double nesting. It's normally not a good way of to go about those kind of problems, right? We have to do repeated work over the same data, right? Especially when you're dealing with like consecutive stuff, right? Substring, subarrays, right? Normally, there are different techniques to kind of help break down the time complexity, right? Because time complexity is kind of big right now, the way that we're doing it, right? We can probably be smart in a way as we're going through, right? Maybe, capture some data or something like that, right? That can help us to break the time complexity, right? So we know that this is just screaming, right? As we're going, right? See that I'm going in a window-like manner, right? Which thing would work right now, right? The classic thing is a sliding window, right? 'Cause we've done several problems that deals with this exact same setup where I think the one that can be useful is to look at is the number of zero ones, right? This is exactly pretty much the same code that we're doing, right? I think they just replaced the W's and the blacks with zeros and the zeros and one with white and black blocks, right? But it's the same underlying algorithm, right? So I'm gonna link it up for you guys so you guys can check it out. It's a very good one, and I think you guys will enjoy, right? We have a pretty good playlist on two pointers here on this channel, so of sliding windows, right? So it's pretty good to look at them, right? So what we're gonna do is to pretty much slide, right? So we will have a right pointer that pretty much expands our window, right? And we have a left pointer that shrinks it, right? So this is a static window, fixed window size 7, right? So it's a lot easier, right? To do, right? So what we're gonna do is to keep looping, right? So we have this right pointer that expands until we get of at least length k, right? So once we get, so we would start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We get to 7, right? And then we stop. Then we check for that substring, right? How many white blocks did we encounter? We encountered 3, so we capture that in 3, right? And then as we're leaving the window, so we need to move this forward, right? And we shrink with the left pointer, right? So as we're shrinking here, right? And this becomes this, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, all right? So let's say this one, right? As we're leaving, right? We have a W, right? Okay, so since W is not in our window anymore, we have, so we how we know how many white blocks we have in a particular window is through a variable that we're gonna have, right? Pretty much a counter that we increment and decrement, right? So as we add white blocks to our window, we increment the number of whites, right? And as we leave out, right, when we're shrinking, we go ahead and decrement the number of the number of white blocks, right? So that we can know at any given time, right, the number of white blocks in our current window, and because that's gonna help us in every time, right, to check if this is the minimum amount of is the least one, right? And so that's kind of what I'm doing here. So I think the code will make a lot more sense. We see how very, very similar it is to the other thing that we've done, right? So how we're gonna start it off is to just do the number of operations, right, is equal to let's start with a very big number, for simplicity's sake, right? And what's next for us is to have a left corner, right? And then we're gonna just go ahead in our loop. We also said we wanted to have a number num white blocks, right, is equal to 0 initially, right? And then we're gonna have int right, because the pointer is gonna help us to expand our window. Put 0 right is less than blocks that length. And then we do right plus plus. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna check, right? Because she's the expanding phase, but we're expanding right now. Okay? Blocks char at the right pointer, right? Okay. So if C is equal to a white block, okay, then the number of white blocks increments, right? Similar logic as the other one, right? Okay, so now that we have that, right, we check our window here. Sure, okay, everything looks good. Okay, so we check, right? Is our window, right? Do we have at least 7 in there? Oh, at least k elements, right? if we have at least 7 elements, then we can go ahead and just what's it called, capture it, right? So map that min of the current min or the number of operations that I need to, the number of blocks that I need to switch, that I need to flip, such that it becomes number of white blocks in my current window, right? That I need to switch to turn it into black, so that I can have the k consecutive black blocks, right? That's kind of what we're doing here. Yeah. And I need to switch them so that, because it's of length k, right? And I need to make those switches so that those things, right? Because it needs to be of length k, right? And the number of white things in the window, right? I need to switch them so that I can have my k consecutive black blocks, right? Let's make sure that part is clear, you guys, right? So I'm repeating it again. Okay, it looks good to me. So what else I'm gonna do here is to just increment the list. So this is the part where I'm shrinking the window now, right? Because I need to move to the right now, right? So I'm incrementing the left corner so that we can move accordingly. Okay. So that's what I'm doing here, guys, right? So it's a very important step. All right, and before I leave, I leave, guys, right? I need to check. So the block, right? So whatever character that the left corner is pointing at, right? All right, whatever character it's pointing at, I need to, since if it's a white block, right? Because every time I'm adding a character, right, to my current window, right? If it's a white block, then I'm increment the number of white blocks in there, right? Because I need to have that count information here, right? So I can know the number of operations that I need to do, right? And I just noticed that the spelling is off here. Okay, looks good. And this is just, we decrement the count, right? Since we're not accounting for that element anymore. All right, looks good so far. Let's press submit, guy. I think we got everything correct. Return the minimum operations needed. As simple as that, right? So let's press run, see if we pass these small test cases. Okay, looks good. Let's press submit. Awesome, guys. We would have passed all these test cases, guys. If you guys found value, you guys understood the thought process, right? And it makes sense to you guys, right? Conceptually. So let me know in the comment section as well, right? If I need to improve in any type of way, also let me know in the comment section. Then yeah, and I'll see you guys in the next video.